Hello, everyone. Welcome to LDS Women Thriving. Happy to be here today. It's your host, Lindsay Bowen, and I'm here with my guest, Nate Clark, who is one of my good friends. And a couple of things, I'm going to introduce Nate to you. So Nate is a dating coach, and he is an author, an event organizer, and I love that he says he's the happiest married person that he knows. He grew up in Idaho, served a mission in Nicaragua. He loves longboarding, skiing, and eating ice cream on the weekends. He started studying dating in 2018 as part of his speech communication bachelor's program. And that same year, he began to coach fellow students and even faculty. Later on, he began hosting singles events, which I've attended, and they're awesome, and published his first book titled Where's My Spouse? A Dating Coach's Road to Eternal Marriage and the Lessons It Taught. And Nate, am I missing anything? Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I think that about covers it. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, let's get started then. So, Nate's going to talk to us today a little bit about dating and about how to improve our dating skills and things that we should avoid and focus on during this time of our single lives and before we get married in preparation for that. So the first question that I'm going to ask Nate is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see LDS singles make in this time of their lives with their dating habits?
I was thinking about that one, and a couple of things came to mind. The first one was the mistake of pressure, putting too much pressure on each other in dating and putting too much pressure on ourselves in dating. And if you think about a relationship, even if it just ends up being a friendship, any healthy relationship needs good soil to grow in. So think about a plant, right? It needs good soil to grow in. It needs enough water and enough sunshine and fresh air. Pressure is like it's like poison to that plant. Little tiny plant that's just trying to kind of get some roots in, the pressure's like digging around the roots and like, is it growing? You know what I mean? Or like, how's it doing? And all of a sudden, you've killed the plant because it's too much pressure, right? So that's the biggest one I see. And like I said, it goes both ways. Either we put too much pressure on each other in dating and we like kind of try to demand people to make up their mind right away, or we are constantly asking friends about their dating relationships and getting way overexcited about something that, is brand new still and putting pressure on them, or worst of all, putting pressure on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I should have figured this out by now. All the self-judgment or things like that. And really it's so much less likely that we're going to be able to create successful relationships when pressure is part of the equation. So that's the first big mistake that I see, and one that I made over and over again, is too much pressure. And so taking the pressure off is going to be the first big step for a lot of people in establishing some really healthy relationships and having a better experience in general with dating, because dating can be stressful and hard, and it becomes a lot more fun once we start to take off the pressure and stress a little bit less about it. So that was the first thing. The second big mistake that I see is, in a nutshell, either caring too much about a potential relationship or not caring at all, right?
Yeah.
And really, if I was to elaborate on what that looks like, the best way to describe it in a longer way would be attachment theory. So for those that have learned about attachment theory, when it comes to relationships, there's a spectrum of attachment within relationships. One end of the spectrum is the anxious side, which is caring too much. And the other end is the avoidant side, which is not caring, enough, more of the apathetic, passive side. And healthy relationships happen when we're right in the middle, which is secure. We care, but we're not anxious and, overdoing it. And we care, but we're not being overly passive or avoidant about the relationship. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So that's what I would say in response to that first question.
Awesome. In regards to pressure, even I would add pressure from family too.
Oh, totally.
So that's definitely
Yeah.
a heavy one because you care very much about what your family thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes we put pressure on ourselves with how we respond to people when they ask about how our dating life is going. I know for me, I was one that was constantly pretty optimistic and hopeful. And so I would get really excited when I met someone new and I had a first date planned or, a second date planned. And close friends or family would be like, hey, like, you told me you were excited for a first date last week. How did it go? And I'd be completely open. I'd be like, it was awesome. Like,
Yep.
super cute girl, like super excited. Right. But I was so enthusiastic with my response that they got really excited. And then, all of a sudden I felt like it wasn't just me that was invested. It was the people that love and care about me. And all of a sudden there's more pressure. Right.
Yep.
And so what I started to do and what I recommend people do is that, until you're dating exclusively, a good answer to people when they ask like, hey, like, how was that date, that you went on is just, it was fun. Like keep your body language really relaxed. It was fun. I'm excited to get to know them better. That's it. That's all you need to say. And then you keep the pressure off because it was fun. Excited to get to know them better, which is a very secure response.
I was going to say that was actually something I was going to follow up with is when it comes to attachment theory, if someone is on one end or the other has a tendency, what are some ideas to best bring them more towards the secure attachment style?
Yeah. Well, speaking from my own experience, I was definitely more on the anxious side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so a big part of it for me was talking through why I felt anxious about relationships with someone. Because there's always a reason that we swing toward one of the extremes, and it usually is based in past experiences, right? Past experiences that we've obviously never fully resolved.
Yes.
Therefore, they're still affecting us now, right? And so, processing past heartbreaks with someone who's a good listener, who's not just going to pelt you with advice, but is, just going to listen and ask good questions to help you verbally process it so that you can mentally and emotionally process it and get to a place where you feel at peace and you can see it through new eyes.
I like that. And it's good to have those kind of friends by your side through this whole process. So.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Now, when dating becomes frustrating, which usually happens if there's pressure, like you said, or if you're leaning towards one end of the spectrum or the other and it's not balanced with the other person, or it seems hopeless because maybe you're older and you've been dating a long time, what can LDS singles do to get back out there and just regain confidence during those moments?
Yeah. A couple things come to mind. One of the first is to have a passion project, something you are working on that you're passionate about, not just because it's fun, but because you really feel like it's going to benefit other people. For me, that was singles events, mainly just because of a quote I heard back in 2017 where someone said, "You'll never get what you want in this life until you help enough other people get what they want first." And for me, that kind of felt like, oh, like maybe I need to help other people with their dating lives and God will bless me with a good fit. And that's what happened. But even before that happened, I found so much fulfillment and purpose in trying to create really warm, welcoming events that made it easier to meet new people, to date in person, that I didn't have as much, I don't know, I wasn't nearly as tempted to stress or worry or doubt about my own dating life because I kind of got lost in the cause of helping other people, which, was another way that God kind of helped me be more secure and ready when a good fit did come along. So a passion project is the first thing that I think can really help people kind of heal and get back out there. Another one is, more of a spiritual side, is to just trust in God's promises. I've been looking in the last several general conferences, the promise that those that make and keep covenants will not be denied the blessing of eternal marriage keeps being repeated. And it's been stated by prophets for years, decades. I have 3 of those instances on the last page of my book. And so kind of revisiting that promise and trusting in that is another thing I think that can help us not feel like it's hopeless, because it's not. I mean, God is more invested in your eternal marriage to someone you're head over heels about than you could ever be. Like, that's his work and his glory, like, to bring to pass your immortality and eternal life. And a huge part of that is being equally yoked with your spouse. So I think just trusting in that and having a clear picture of God wants it for you more than you want it for yourself. The third and final thing goes back to the idea of working through things with someone, talking about things, verbally processing things with someone who's a good listener. I would recommend to all of your listeners that they find a friend that they can become therapy buddies with.
I love that.
Where they're literally like therapy buddies for each other. And, they set some ground rules. They're like, hey, when I'm struggling, I want to be able to come to you and to talk about stuff. And when you're struggling, you can come to me, and let's set some ground rules that we never give advice or suggestions unless it's asked for. We just listen with empathy, and we ask good questions. Good questions like, hey, what's got you feeling this way? What's been going on? What's been on your mind? And then after that, oh, okay, how does that make you feel? Like, and that's a hard one, because I've noticed that with me and conversations like this that I've had, I'm able to process things the best and have the best results when I'm the most vulnerable about the emotion I'm actually feeling. When I'm clear about, I feel hurt, or I feel betrayed, or I feel undervalued, or I feel, any number of negative emotions. If we can clearly articulate what that negative feeling is, then we'll be able to clearly resolve it. And a good question after that a therapy buddy could ask would be, oh man, that does sound hard. What does that remind you of? Does that remind you of any past experiences? And that question alone has been like one of the single most helpful questions for me in my dating life with these conversations, but also since being married. Marriage is full of hard conversations. That's going through those is what keeps marriage so amazing and keeps you close and growing together, right? Is having those conversations. But that specific question, what does that remind you of? Really, I think is a huge key to helping people feel good enough to get back out there, because they realize, oh yeah, I've been feeling undervalued, which reminds me of that one experience when I was a teenager, with a certain group of people, and all of a sudden they start to realize, oh, that's where this is really coming from. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, is there a way that, you could let God help you see that through new eyes now and feel a little bit differently about that? Maybe you can extend some forgiveness to those people or yourself, or be grateful for the things that taught you now that it's been a while since you had that experience. And it's like, yeah, I can do that. And all of a sudden you feel better, and you see your current, dating life differently through new eyes, and your current prospects, and the hope comes back, and the enthusiasm or motivation can come back. And so those are some things that have really worked well for me in the past.
I love that. I feel like it's I mean, what I get out of what you just said is that it's better understanding yourself and then better understanding your past and how it's influenced where you're at. And sometimes that is not easy to do unless you have someone to talk it out with. Otherwise, different miscommunication and things happen, and it's confusing, and it makes you unable to move forward. And so it sounds like in some ways that's your role as a dating coach, is to help people be able to work through different things so that they can be better able to hit dating with a healthy perspective and not get in the way of themselves.
Yeah.
And
yeah, for sure.
With these different struggles that people deal with in dating, what are some healthy habits and mindset changes that you think will help LDS singles make better choices in their dating habits?
Yeah, healthy habits and mindset changes. One healthy habit I recommend is in regards to dating apps, because there's a lot of unhealthy habits with dating apps.
Yes, there is.
Right. So I recommend the healthy habit of using dating apps for their intended purpose, to meet people, and not for any other reason. But also to avoid the unhealthy habit of excessive use of dating apps, putting all of your eggs in that basket, if you will, becoming too invested in them. And so a healthy habit that I found was something I've repeated several times at seminars and things like that. And it's in my book as well, where I kind of tell the full story of how it came about. But a healthy habit that I formed with dating apps was called the toothbrush rule, where I was only allowed to use dating apps while I was brushing my teeth, which was a total of like 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night. That was it. It's like 4 minutes a day, right? Which I found to be a really secure habit, because then I didn't get sucked into, the anxious swiping. Like, oh, maybe it'll be the next one.
Obsessive.
Yeah. And that can be easy to get into, especially when we're struggling, or we're feeling lonely, or feeling anxious, or whatever. So that's one healthy habit, is just to use them, right? Again, the extreme would be, okay, I'm not going to use any dating apps, and you close all those potential doors God could bring someone through. And the other extreme is, I'm going to use it so much that I feel anxious and stressed out by the time I finished using it for an hour or whatever. Yeah, so I recommend right in the middle, right? That toothbrush rule. So there's one healthy habit. Let's see. Another mindset thing is one of choosing to see dating clearly for what it is. At first, when I started dating, I thought dating was only to help me find my future wife. And I don't believe that anymore. I think that that's a falsehood. I don't think that that's the only good thing that's going to come out of dating. I don't think that's its only purpose, especially in God's eyes. I think he's got a lot more reasons that he allows us to go through the process of dating. And there's a lot of really valuable things that we can receive from it if we choose to be open to other blessings that can come from that. And what I mean is that for me, God taught me that my struggles with dating, he told me that for me, that was the perfect school to be practicing and developing Christ-like attributes, like forgiveness, like kind, patient communication, like courage, like, a lot of these different attributes that we can develop through the tricky path of dating. And so, choosing to be open to that being the only good that comes out of a relationship that didn't work out sometimes, most of the time. Another mindset thing is we need to realize that finding a good fit that you could actually have a healthy eternal marriage with is the exception, not the rule. 90 something% of the time in your dating life, you're going to be interacting with someone who's not a good fit, where there isn't a mutual level of interest. It's almost always going to be unbalanced. And that's the rule with almost anyone that's single that you would run into. Like, how many people in the world are you not a good fit with?
Most people.
Most of them, right? But it's so easy sometimes in dating to get stuck in this mindset of like, I don't know. At least for me, I was like, man, I could make it work with lots of girls. Lots of them would probably find me attractive and like a good spouse, um, and that not to say, I guess, number one, that was prideful. Number two, it wasn't realistic at all. Like, it's the exception when a good fit comes along. It will happen. Sometimes there's a drought for a year or two or more even, but it will happen. And so the goal isn't to make it happen. The goal is to be ready when it does. And so, yeah, that's another mindset thing. One last mindset thing is the matter of mutual levels of interest. I think a lot of people get stuck in the mindset of leagues, like, oh, this person's out of my league. And it's like, no, like leagues don't exist. Like, you can take a look at quite a few celebrities even that you're like, how did they end up with them? Like, they don't look like they're in the same league. Like, you know what I mean? Especially some of like, anyway, so that's one example, but just realizing that leagues are a lie. They don't exist. What does exist is a mutual level of interest. And like I said, that only happens once in a while. So yeah, there's a couple mindset things, and a healthy habit.
It's fantastic.
That come to mind.
Thank you. I would say to your second to last tip with mindset is that when it comes to fit, that truly, even those that you think could be a good fit, you have to make it. You don't want to force things. You need to either allow it to naturally come together and the communication to flow. You don't ever want to force a fit because you're impatient or because you're tired or lonely, or you don't also sometimes let them move on or let a relationship end so that you can both go your separate ways and meet someone that's a better fit for you. I feel like that's definitely a pothole I've seen people fall into.
Yeah, absolutely. Going along with that, Elder Holland's son, Matthew S. Holland, was the president of UVU while I was there. And he came and spoke at the Institute about his dating journey and not finding his wife till he was, I think it was late 30s. Anyway, he said that the best advice he ever got was from his mission president. He finished his mission, and instead of his mission president being like, okay, get out there and get married, that's your next assignment.
Which is most mission presidents, honestly.
Which I've heard is pretty common. Yeah. His mission president said, don't put it off, but don't you dare force it. And I was like, that's a balanced piece of advice right there. That's not anxious. It's not avoidant. That's secure. Don't put it off. Don't force it. Don't you dare force it. It reminds me of something a cute little grandma temple worker once told me in the temple when me and my friend were there. She asked if either of us were married or dating or whatever. And we were like, no, not yet. And she's like, well, it's better to be happily single than miserably married to the wrong person, or rather to someone that's not a good fit. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for validating, our choices to continue to hope and pray and work for a good fit, because it is worth it. This is eternity we're talking about, and this is a lot of time together. And so you need to find someone that's a good fit, and where you don't have to force things with, where it's, obvious that you're a good fit to each other.
I love that. And to wait, if need be, wait for it to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your past with coming to the point you're at now. What do you wish you had done differently when you were in the dating world, and what advice would you give your past self?
I wish that I would have made my social life more than just dating. When I was in college, dating was my social life. Once in a while, I did other things, but because I spent most of my free time going on dates, I think it's, I know it increased the pressure I felt. Um, but I think I also kind of robbed myself of the kinds of, healthy recreational experiences with friends that you can only really have while you're single. Because once you get married and start having kids, like you've given so much of your time and energy, you've committed so much of that to other people, your spouse and your kid that um I don't know, going on long road trips and going to, travel a little bit and to I don't know, even just plan simple get-togethers with friends like game nights or hikes or things like that. Not because you're trying to find someone to date necessarily, but just because you love life and you want to enjoy it and, and make the most of every phase. So I wish I would have done a little bit more of that. I did some, but I wish I would have done more because number one, it's a unique time of life. There's opportunities that won't come again. And number two, because it would have helped me feel more secure in my dating experiences and, you know, be might have helped me be a little bit ready a little bit sooner. Um, so yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things is I probably spent, I don't know, probably spent like 80 to 90% of my social life dating. And I think if I could go back, I would have spent, I don't know, more like 30 or 40% of it dating and the rest of it with, with family and friends and having the kinds of experiences that are unique to that phase of life.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that comes back to the pressure thing where if your focus is too much on one thing, then the pressure is on. And it can push you to see life through a lens that maybe is not the best, not the healthiest. Now, I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
another question about in regards to when people are just barely starting a dating relationship. From your experience with as a dating coach and what you've seen, what do you feel like are some ground rules between the couple that they can establish early on that will help them prepare for what could become a marriage and make a healthy
Yeah.
relationship?
Yeah, for sure. So my first girlfriend taught me an acronym that I carried with me for the next 6 or 7 years of dating that I really liked. And I think she learned it from an institute teacher or something, but it was so helpful to me. And the acronym was an acronym of things to agree to avoid before marriage, while you're dating exclusively or even engaged. And those things to avoid were encompassed in the acronym HALT, HALT. So HALT, H was for the horizontal position, like lying down together. A was for alone, like in areas inaccessible to other people, right? Behind locked doors or things like that. L was for late, being together at an hour that's so late where studies actually show that tiredness can have similar effects to alcohol, right? You're just not making your best choices when you're that tired. Um, and then T. T can stand for two different things, but it comes down to kissing. T can stand for tongue and choosing to avoid using your tongue while kissing, which is really wise to avoid
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that studies show that, making out and using your tongue can have the same like biological effects as having
Yeah.
sex. And so it can definitely lead there a lot easier. And I've been told that by people. And so that's something I would recommend avoiding and setting as a ground rule. But the other T is also time for kissing, right? I'd recommend setting a rule where you're like, hey, let's not watch the clock or anything, but like,
Yes.
let's not make these kissing sessions, like maybe we say roughly, let's avoid kissing for longer than like, on and off for like 5 minutes, or I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever works for the couple. But having set those ground rules really did so much for me. And it meant so much to my wife, because it was like second date that we were like, okay, we're both definitely interested. And I was like, hey, here's an acronym I'd like to stick with if you're down. And she was like, whoa, like it was surprising to her, and she was so grateful. Just because it's rare, so many girls feel like they've got to be kind of the referee when it comes to physical
Mm-hmm.
touch, and they don't. That's not their job. It's a mutual thing that they need to, share with the person they're dating. And if that person's not willing to draw some boundaries early on and stick to them, they're not a good fit. Like,
Yes.
there's no point in continuing that relationship if they're going to push boundaries the whole time. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. One more ground rule type thing that I would recommend, especially for women, is that they at some point early on in the relationship, definitely before becoming exclusive, I would recommend that they ask the guy that they're considering dating exclusively about pornography. That's such a common struggle these days for so many guys. Even really, really good guys have struggled with it. That it's something that you trust me, you just don't want to go into blindly.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make it like a point blank type question where it's like, so are you using pornography or not? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It can be a lot more comfortable than that, where you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt and you assume the best. And you can phrase the question like this, something along the lines of, hey, just curious. I'm sure it's hard, especially as a man in the world we live in today. What did you do the last time you were confronted with pornography? Because everyone is all the time, constantly. Like, what did you do? And you'll be able to tell by their response if they're an active user or not. But at least that way, you're like, you're phrasing it where you're kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt, assuming and hoping that their response is, well, I turned off my phone right away, or I unfollowed that account right away, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that way it's not like an accusatory question. It's like, hey, we both know this is a real thing, and it's constantly out there, and people are constantly being approached with it. What do you do? How do you stay away from that? So that's something I would recommend. As something to figure out right away. And it goes both ways. I think that it would be good for guys to be mindful of that, and to ask girls they're considering dating about that as well. But especially for the girls,
Mm-hmm.
that's something I recommend.
And for a girl, I suppose if they were to find out that they're an active pornography user, what do you think would be the best course of action? Or, every situation is different, but in general, yeah, because that's a very difficult situation.
Yeah. My recommendation would be to say something along the lines of, man, well, I still think you're a great person. I genuinely, enjoy time with you, and I don't think any less of you. And I know that healthy relationships can't happen when this is part of the equation. So, let's take a break when it comes to dates, and once you've been free and clear of that for, let's say, a month, feel free to reach back out and we can pick up where we left off. But I don't recommend you continue to go out with them while they're using pornography. It's just a bad idea. yeah, you're never going to have a healthy relationship until that's out of the equation.
Yeah, I agree. It makes things
Yeah.
difficult. And in general, with
Yeah.
dating and with someone that maybe, for example, is having lonely nights or is, yeah, just losing heart, losing faith, what would be your simple message to them?
Um, don't you dare settle. It is worth dating years, even decades to find a good fit, because of the fact that all those lonely nights and all those heartbreaks simply melt away when you do. Um, and I found that hard to believe when people told me that, but it wasn't more than just a couple months of being married to the love of my life, best fit I ever could have found, that it was like I forgot about all of those lonely nights and all of those heartbreaks. Like, close friends of mine that were still single would tell me what they were going through, and I still had empathy for them, but not in the way that I did while I was still single, because it was like God had healed all of those wounds. And this goes back to something that the first girl I dated was the granddaughter of an apostle, and he told her, while she was beginning the dating process, he said, it's hard to believe while you're dating, but once you find a good fit and you get married at the right place, at the right time, all of that yearning you feel is just gone. Like, it's completely satisfied. That hole is filled. And only God can do that with a good fit. And so, yeah, I would just encourage your listeners to believe that and to look forward to that, because it will happen in God's timing, right? But it will happen to all of the faithful.
I love it. Thank you. The last question I
Yeah.
have for you, because most of our listeners are women, and so what is the best advice that you can give our single sisters in the church while dating?
Hmm. To live a life, fill your time and energy with things that bring real happiness. Men are attracted to happy women. There's something about happy women that, yeah, it just adds so much more to everything. Believe it or not, even looks like a happy, attractive girl looks so much happier than someone, equally physically attractive that's not happy, that hasn't been filling their life with good things and their soul with light. There's something about true joy and happiness and the light of Christ that literally enhances people's level of attractiveness, like nothing else can. And yes, a lot of that comes from making and keeping covenants, and being anxiously engaged in your calling and ministering and missionary work. But one of the other things that I think falls by the wayside more often than not is making time to have fun. As an adult, so often we get so caught up in the seriousness of life that we don't make time to be silly or to be creative or to goof off or to seriously make time for things that we're just not serious about at all, because it's all for fun. So yeah, I would recommend that all of your listeners do all of that, especially, if they've got the first things down pat, that they take some time to kind of unlock the child within and just play sometimes, whether that's with nieces and nephews or with friends that they can be completely comfortable and goofy with. But that is so so healthy and brings an extra bounce in your step and sparkle in your eye that you just, I don't know, it just makes life that much more enjoyable and prepares you that much more for the love of your life when God does bring them along.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And while you were speaking, one more thing came to mind that I think would be valuable to my listeners, that you have
Yeah.
shared in a previous seminar. It's just, I remember it, remind me exactly what this is called, but it's like the 5 different, what is it called? The 5 different attributes to look for, 5 different attributes. Do
Oh,
you want to go over that really quick as like an exercise,
sure.
potential
Yeah.
exercise that they could do?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, and if you want it in more detail, it's for all the listeners, it's in my book, Where's My Spouse? It's on Amazon, and then I recorded it and put it on Audible as well. So you can find like the full story and the full explanation there. But in a nutshell, it's a realistically picky list. um, People have all different kinds of opinions about having a list of attributes for the kind of person you want to marry. This one's realistically picky. And it's picky in the fact that part of the list are things that you're for sure looking for. It's realistic in the fact that a latter part of the list are things that you're not necessarily looking for, but you you'd be willing to let God help you live with. So to elaborate, the list is called the 5, 6, 7. It's in those three different sections: 5 attributes, 6 attributes, and 7 attributes. The top 5 are your must-haves. You'll know you're settling if you're dating someone who doesn't have these top 5 highest priorities.
Non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables, yeah. Things like they're also someone who makes and keeps their covenants. They're all in the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? I think physical attraction should be in that top 5, because you can't have a healthy marriage without some physical attraction.
Yep.
Mutual physical attraction. I think, personality could also be in there, having a personality that you can have fun with and joke around with. Someone who's got sincere empathy for other people, for example, someone who doesn't blame all their mistakes on other people, but takes responsibility for their own mistakes. Someone who has self-control, right? Some of these like core attributes that you need to have a successful marriage and raise a happy family. Okay, the next section, 6 things, are also things you're looking for, but they're under construction, currently under construction. So attributes like financially stable. Maybe they do have some debt, but you can tell they're not letting it accumulate. In fact, they're working it off as quick as they can, right? So attributes you want, but maybe they're not there all the way, but you can tell that they're working on it and they're going to get there. So that's the second section. So 6 things that are under construction. Last section is 7 things that I like to call not planned for, but worth it. Meaning, if they've got a couple things in this 7 list that you weren't looking for and you weren't really planning on, but they've got all 5 and all 6, totally still worth it, because they're human and we all have, imperfections. So some things that might go on the 7 list are, I don't know, maybe some physical attributes that, I don't know, maybe he's bald or balding, right? And you're like, okay, I wasn't necessarily looking for a bald guy, but I'm still physically attracted. So whatever, right? Maybe their family, a lot of their family members are no longer members of the church, or even have some negative feelings against the church. I don't know. You probably weren't looking for that, if you're an active member of the church, but with everything else you know about them, is it still worth it? Maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some physical disabilities. Maybe they've got some severe allergies or other things like that. Maybe, I don't know. I could go on and on, right? But things that you're not necessarily looking for, still be worth it. So that's the list. I recommend you create it digitally, because you're constantly going to want to update it. The purpose of this list isn't to like be checking boxes every time you meet someone, as much as it is to help you have a mindset of being realistically picky, where you're not going to settle, but you're also not going to forget that you're going to marry a human,
Yes.
not an immortal. Someday, yes, you'll both be exalted and perfect. That'll be great. So you can look forward to that. But in the meantime, you're going to marry a human that, just like you, has insecurities and things that they're working on. So that's what I recommend when it comes to defining what a good fit looks like for you.
Perfect. Yeah, I knew this is
Yep.
a valuable thing, and I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, this has
Yeah,
been
happy to.
awesome. Always is. Whenever I hear one of your seminars or even just any setting where you're speaking, you have a lot of valuable knowledge, and I appreciate that. And
Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate those compliments, and we all just keep learning and doing the best we can to help those around us, right?
that's right. Okay, fantastic. Well, I hope that our listeners have found something valuable that you can apply now with your dating habits, and to not lose heart and just keep at it. And a couple of the key things that Nate mentioned is don't settle, still have your standards high, look for a good fit for you, and try to make some healthy habits part of your dating experience. All right. Well, thank you again, Nate, for joining us, and hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.